The Baltimore Ravens 2023 stadium practice officially concluded. We talk about an instant analysis to everything that happened, do a little bit of a stock report, and so much more come up next here on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in here to another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I am your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, coming to you on a Saturday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day here. Thank you so much for being here on this Saturday, making us your first listen each and every day. Free and available as always here, all podcasting platforms, including over in video form on YouTube. You can check us out anywhere. So if you want to listen one day and maybe you want to watch another day, that's totally all right. You're not missing anything. It's the same show, both audio and video form here, and 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Usually this special Saturday episode edition here, but Monday through Friday we give you Ravens content, and obviously it's picking up now with training camp, and we're talking stadium practice today. As it was exciting, right? Fans got to go to the stadium and see everybody. We heard the cheers, right? Odell, Lamar Jackson, those two, the star-powered duo between those guys. We're going to be talking about a lot, just getting into a general stadium practice analysis, going into just what happened, just in general over the first part of the show. Then in the second part, we'll do a bit of a stock report, whose stock is up, whose stock is down after Baltimore Stadium practice. Then we'll just look at the latest Ravens news and notes. I used to call those segments news, notes, and quotes, but we'll just do what's happening, the transactions the Ravens have made. There's actually been a couple new developments, and maybe there will continue to be over the course of this entire show. But yeah, thank you for tuning into the live here today. We do these after every big thing, so I thought, why not do it for the stadium practice? We'll have more analysis on that on Monday, but you can subscribe here on Locked On Ravens and turn notifications on. You can also comment on these lives, and if you're listening in audio form, as you do know, if you're listening, these will be up after the fact there. So let's just get into an overall analysis of what happened during the stadium practice. And there were actually a few former Ravens. If you were watching the Ravens broadcast, you heard Donnell Ellerbe, Vonta Leach get up there and talk, and the Ravens broadcast team does a great job with that. Jimmy Smith, though, also was in attendance, and it felt like the offense struggled to an extent, but not totally. It felt like it was kind of an uneven day for the offensive side of the ball, where I think the offensive line was that was the struggle bus for them. Not everybody. We'll talk about who impressed and who didn't on the offensive line in the second part of the show. But to me, at least, I feel like Lamar Jackson had some nice throws. The Odell-Lamar Jackson connection is really picking up, it feels like. We saw a couple of really nice plays. Odell-Lamar connected. It was a little touch pass from Lamar that ended up being a touchdown, beat Marlon Humphrey, Odell did. And I couldn't see, but there was a play. I think it might have been the second play of 11 on 11s, or maybe it was 7 on 7s. But Odell, I think Marlon was up in press coverage, and Odell gave Marlon Humphrey a move. He gave Odell a little move. Now, Marlon ended up, I think, gaining some ground, and the throw went to Mark Andrews. It didn't even go to Odell. But Odell gave Marlon Humphrey a move. And so, again, you want to use the phrase iron sharpens iron, you can absolutely do that here. And Mike White saying, I love seeing Odell sell out for that sideline catch. Looks like Greg Lewis cautioned him on the sideline, though. And yeah, don't want to throw away the body too early into training camp here, right? But look, he's going hard. He has something to prove. So I like that comment there, Mike. It really feels like Odell's buying in here. And then the Chef 87 tuning in, saying, my man Kevin O, OBJ, and Likely look great. Yep, you hit it on the head with some of the stock ups we'll talk about in the second part of the show. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But yeah, it felt like Odell and Lamar, the connection definitely there. And then other ones I felt like, Isaiah Likely, let's just talk about it. The Chef 87 said it. Isaiah Likely had a good day, catching passes all over the place. And I'm trying to look up right now just a couple of the other plays that happened. And the attendance overall was pretty great, 19,217. And look, for everybody that was out there, credit to you. Credit to you for being out there. What does Kyle say here? It was 102 degrees. The heat index was on Saturday afternoon. So Yeah, that was, and yeah, Sports Guru 0258 coming in saying, don't forget the Likely touchdown. He caught a couple passes and had some touchdowns in there too. So I think Likely was one of the standouts. We'll again get to that more in the second part of the show. Tariq Black, I thought, made a nice catch from Tyler Huntley, and then there were a couple of big shots, but Rocky Yassin had a couple of nice plays. I also think that we saw, we talk about the Odell and Lamar connection, and I feel like that's where everybody's going to be going because of just how excited it is. Odell with the star power Odell has is off the charts. From a pure celebrity perspective, like star power celebrity perspective, I don't think there are a lot of people that can maybe touch what Lamar has built himself there. Odell, though, I think is up there. I think Odell, most Instagram followers, I think the stat they played was Patrick Mahomes is the next highest in terms of Instagram followers, and Odell has like 3 times or more than 3 times his number. So Odell's that star power guy, but he's also a pretty good NFL receiver. And look, in terms of, what I would say to expect from Odell this year, I'm not expecting like prime New York Giants Odell, right? But I'm expecting like low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. I think that's a fair, if, he's fully healthy, the knee feels great and everything. I think that's a fair, where Odell was, one of the best receivers in the league, high-end wide receiver 1 production. Maybe not even, they might not even be getting mid wide receiver 1 production, but I think if you get low-end wide receiver 1 and a high-end wide receiver 2 production out of Odell this year, that's great because you also have Rashad Bateman. You also have Zay Flowers. Now, both of those guys didn't practice. Zay Flowers didn't practice for the second consecutive day, apparently dealing with a little bit of an illness, but should be back, or at least there's a chance for him to be back on Monday, according to John Harbaugh. And Rashad Bateman obviously still dealing with the foot. J.K. Dobbins didn't practice. JB coming in here in the comments saying they use a fullback more than I expected. I think Ricard's position is safe. I think so too. And I think it's going more, how do I put it? It's going more into you want to be familiar with just some of the sets you run, but they're going to use some of the stuff. And again, you're not going to show your entire playbook in the stadium practice, right? You're not even going to show it throughout the entirety of the preseason. So I'm interested to see how the fullback role is used, starting week 1 and going throughout the course of the regular season. Now, Ben Mason is a guy who, if you've listened, if you're an everydayer here and you heard me talk even over the course of last week, I'm super interested to see, 1, what Ricard's role is in particular, but 2, how they feel about Ben Mason. Now, I had kind of toyed with the idea, if you listened to my roster projection show last week, of keeping Ben Mason on the roster as like a 4th tight end. And we'll talk about the tight end position because there are a couple of under the radar guys who could make a spot, could maybe make a roster spot here. But I was like, what if they kept Ben Mason and then they have him as like Patrick Ricard insurance? And I ended up going against that because I thought, well, you can there's a better shot of you being able to sneak Ben Mason onto your practice squad with the way the fullback position is right now, as opposed to maybe a defensive lineman or an edge guy or a corner or an offensive lineman. Now, we went through this rodeo once before with Mason, and then he ended up going to the Patriots practice squad, and that was a whole Harbaugh was pissed about that. He was very mad about that. But I think that with the fullback position in general, I think, look, Mason made a juggling catch. So he's been involved a little bit, was also involved during OTAs as well. And, Kyle Hamilton was Mark Andrews. I missed out on the whole point I was trying to make. Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson, that connection is still strong. Hasn't gone anywhere, will not go anywhere. There were a lot, Mark Andrews touchdowns. The first completion of the day was Mark Andrews from Lamar. He was being defended by Kyle Hamilton. And it was just, the offense early was very rough. The defense was definitely having their way. But then when Jackson needs to play, goes over to Mark Andrews, and he hit him for a short curl, also had a touchdown there. And there was one of those signature Mark Andrews plays where Lamar is looking, doesn't really go through the read, or he goes through the reads, but there's nothing available. And then Mark Andrews just goes up, gets open in the middle of the field, and Lamar dumps it there. So that was a nice play. There was a nice play from Tyler Huntley to Isaiah Likely, who we talked about, 20-yard strike over there. And, if training camp updates, Kyle Barber, who I'm looking at right now from what he had to say, because, it's good to get the opinions of other people as well in this. Kyle does one of the best jobs out there. You also have other guys out there like Jess Rebick, Jonah Schaefer, et cetera. But, offense going through the tight ends. And, right, that's what kind of happens, or at least what we saw happen for this Ravens team. So I don't know. The offense got better as the day went on. Justin Tucker was out there, was short from 65 yards, but then went 1 for 2 from 60. Travis Jones, I thought, he had a good day. Sam Mustipher was someone, we'll talk about this. He didn't, stock down for me there. But I think the biggest takeaway was that the offense is still learning. They're still going through things, and that's expected, right? I'm not expecting the offense just go out there and dominate every single day when there's new terminology. We know Lamar's not using the wristband right now, and that's a good thing. Todd Monk can kind of talk about how Lamar has to hear him and not necessarily rely totally on the wristband. So I think the stadium practice overall, I liked what I saw from Lamar and Odell in terms of their connection there. We also saw a couple of nice things from Isaiah Likely, and then defensively too. There were a couple of nice plays. So I think it was honestly a balanced day. Maybe you could say the defense won it because the offense struggled so hard early on in the offensive line. There's a clip I put out there on Twitter of Lamar Jackson making something that, and look, if there were pads and it was a real game, Lamar probably gets sacked. And I say probably because you never know. You never know the deal with Lamar and if he's able to get it. We've seen Lamar make Houdini magic, countless times. It's not even surprising anymore. But the offensive line struggled. We'll talk about that a bit more in the second part of the show. So still a lot to dive into on Locked On Ravens. We'll be right back with more Ravens content, talking about a stock report, whose stock rose, whose stock fell during the training camp practice here on a Saturday as we were streaming live here on YouTube. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to talk about on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. And if you're a big fantasy person, I want to plug this again real quick. Locked On Ravens Fantasy Leagues. We're doing Locked On Ravens Fantasy Leagues. It's going to be the third year of me doing this. We've had a lot of great reception from it. A lot of, I think I had like 10 leagues last year. We're doing those. So if you want to sign up for those, I'll put a tweet out probably sometime next week or in a couple of weeks. But for fantasy, our partners at Locked On Podcast Network here over at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. So whether you're prepping for a Locked On Ravens fantasy draft, you're scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to be providing you the players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with that draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny's picked out first on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And for me, someone who I was super impressed with last year was Trevor Lawrence. So maybe those top-tier quarterbacks are off the board in fantasy drafts in 2023. There's another line of guys, though, those luxury passers and maybe even runners who are guaranteed to fit your starting lineup every single week. Driving a sleeker Jaguars offense and now features wide receiver Calvin Ridley. Trevor Lawrence has that top 5 scoring upside. As a quarterback, one, expect Lawrence to keep living up to his immense arm and athletic talent and cruise to production that builds off his hot finish to last season. And again, Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows the championship team is about being a perfect fit for each player. And it's the same thing with your vehicle. So with eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, batteries, tail lights, alternators, anything you need. Shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure you're the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed helps you understand exactly what parts you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forward, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. The eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, diving into an instant analysis here on this Saturday of the Ravens Stadium practice. It was a really exciting day, getting to see everybody out there and, Odell in that stadium for the first time. A lot of those other additions as well. Now, Zay Flowers didn't practice, unfortunately, but again, hopefully he will be back on Monday. I'm wearing the palm tree shirt. Usually I only reserve this for special occasions. And if you tune into the very, very end of the show, if you stay with us here, I'll reveal why I'm wearing the shirt. But it's also, I think, a special occasion today, right? Because of the stadium practice. Let's look at the comments quickly here before we get into the second part of the show. Nick D saying, with all the new additions, who do you believe will be our red zone clutch wide receiver / tight end? Well, I'll do one for each, wide receiver and tight end. Tight end wise, I have to go Mark Andrews. I'll do two. I'll do one obvious answer, like, oh yeah, and then one like under the radar second option. Mark Andrews, tight end wise, has to be like the top option. Again, even though there are the new additions, even though it's Odell, even though it's Zay Flowers and all those guys in there, I'm not, I don't think that the connection between Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson is going away. In fact, we literally saw in the practice today that it did not go away. It was exciting to see seemingly Lamar and Mark Andrews pick up right where they left off with the addition of Odell, with the addition of Zay Flowers. I think that's just going to take pressure off of Mark Andrews. And the other guy who I think, huge stock up, Isaiah Likely. Likely's going to be someone who I'm very interested to see how Monken uses him, how Todd Monken uses him in the offense, because we know he can line up in line, he can line up in the slot, he can line up outside. So where is he going to be used? And also, I'm interested to see how Likely's blocking has come along. We'll see it throughout the course of the preseason. But if you remember last preseason, the blocking from Isaiah Likely was not there, right? It was not great. Now, I thought he improved over the course of the season a little bit. But to me, so tight end, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. Wide receiver, I'll say Odell's okay, that's an obvious answer because we've seen him as a red zone threat in the past. And again, I'm not saying they're going to get prime New York Giants Odell, but at the same time here, I think there's a lot of excitement surrounding him, and rightfully so. And then maybe that's a sleeper guy. I'm going to say Zay Flowers, not that he's like a sleeper that he's not going to produce this year, but a sleeper that he can get open in a hurry in the red zone. And maybe if you're 5 yards to go, like if you're first and goal from the 4 and you run like a quick out or a quick slant across the middle of the field, with how sudden Zay Flowers is, how he glides through his routes, I don't know. I think to me that's going to be super exciting. So we'll get into a stock report now, though. Let's pull up what I have here. And again, if you are watching live in the comments and you want to put in who you thought did well or who you thought maybe fumbled their opportunity, you can comment that, and I'll obviously read them out here. And Alyssa in the comments saying, KO, what's going on, Alyssa? How you doing? I think for my first stock up of the day for training camp, I'm going to say Lamar. I'm going to say Lamar. Now, as a whole, the offense struggled early on, but I will say that we saw a couple of nice throws from Lamar, and obviously I think the play that's getting everybody's attention is the one that was posted on Twitter, and, I put it out there of Lamar kind of running around and doing Lamar Jackson things pretty much. So that's the one where everyone's like, ooh, right? But the Odell-Lamar connection, some of the throws we saw him make, I'll say Lamar was stock up. I'll also say Gus Edwards was stock up to me, because of the fact that he was catching passes out of the backfield. We saw a nice run. Edwards is someone who is obviously, I guess, benefiting from not having J.K. Dobbins out there. Now, of course, you would want to see J.K. Dobbins out there, but Edwards is getting the first team reps, and that's how it will be until Dobbins is back. Now, speaking of running backs, Justice Hill is someone who Justice Hill has had a very interesting career arc. He's kind of the forgotten man in that, Dobbins suffered the injury in 2021. Edwards did as well. Justice Hill also was out for all that 2021 season. I don't even know. There was a point where I wasn't sure if he was on the Ravens roster anymore, but he ends up coming back in 2022. I was skeptical. I was like, how much juice does he have left? We haven't really seen him unleashed yet. Got a role last year, looked explosive, looked agile, looked fast. He was someone who was one of my, in terms of like where I thought he was versus where he was at the end of the season, Justice Hill was that guy. He continued that, especially I thought today in practice, looked really shifty, looked really fast. And I'm excited about Justice Hill, even if it is a running back 3 role for him, if he's going to be able to go out there and just carve out even a bigger role for himself. Now, what's going to happen with Melvin Gordon? What's going to happen with Keaton Mitchell? We'll see, but I was impressed overall with Justice Hill. Then I think another guy whose stock was up, we talked about Odell a lot, was making catches. The connection there was great. Mark Andrews we talked about too. Both, I think, are going to be Lamar's top targets this year. I think Zay Flowers is going to be targeted a lot too. And obviously, we cannot forget about Rashad Bateman. Even though Bateman is not out there, we cannot forget about him in this offense. As I likely we talked about, again, super intrigued to see where he is lined up at throughout the course of the season. But Travis Vokolek is someone who we kind of heard the rumblings of him over the day 2, day 3 of training camp. Vokolek is someone that I think if you're looking like tight end 4, I talked about who's going to be the tight end 4 if there is one. I really don't. I think they keep 3. But if there is a tight end 4, who's going to be? I talked about Ben Mason. Maybe it could be Travis Vokolek. Vokolek is an undrafted guy. And even if there is, a practice squad opening, that could be you can keep Ben Mason and he's a fullback tight end versatile option, or you can keep Vokolek. And I think they can honestly do both, but I thought Vokolek had a really solid day overall. Tyler Linderbaum, all accounts, looked really, really good. And he ended up, he's been a good player for them. Obviously, it's only been 1 season. But I think what I like the most out of Linderbaum's game is how powerful he is. Now, I know people have the size concerns, and there will be times where he struggles against just super big guys in the middle of the defense. But I thought Linderbaum had a pretty good day. Justin Madubuike, well, the defensive line, honestly, like Madubuike, Travis Jones, those two guys. Madubuike had a nice rep. Michael Pierce, even he's a guy whose stock was up for me. He's someone who I don't think people remember. Some people do, I'm sure, but he was really good for them in the very limited action that he played for them last season. It was only, a game and a half. He got injured in the Dolphins game week 2. But Pierce is someone who I'm super excited about. And Travis Jones, though, he's the guy who I think could the biggest jump from year 1 to year 2, or the younger guys like Madubuike, Washington. We saw Madubuike and Washington have pretty big roles for the Ravens last year. But for me, I think that Travis Jones is a guy who, he's talking year 1 to year 2 leap. He's super strong. And I know the point was made that, Marlon Humphrey and all these guys, like, you're going to have the Roquan Smiths and Kyle Hamilton's coming on. I don't know. I think Travis Jones could be a super high impact player. Now, not to the level of a Humphrey, or not to the level of maybe a Roquan, but I think he could have a really, really good year this year. I think someone who also showed a lot to me was David Ojabo. We've heard the Ojabo hype all offseason. He's looked really good. This is it's kind of his rookie season. He played the game against Cincinnati in 2022. His one tackle, I always say, is the strip sack on Joe Burrow, and obviously get well soon to Joe Burrow. You never want to see guys get injured. But Ojabo looked great in the stadium practice. We see the flashes. And even Odafe Owe, I thought Owe, you see the get off from Owe on a couple plays. That was good. And then stock down-wise, I'm even just perusing through the Twitter comments here. Sam Mustipher, well, I put Sam Mustipher as a guy who was stocked down because it seemed like, and again, by all accounts, he was just kind of getting bullied out there, especially in the one-on-ones. And, there are a lot of people who also agreed with that. Also, other people saying Salah's stock was down. The whole offensive line, honestly, outside of Tyler Linderbaum, struggled. Mustipher struggled. Even Ronnie Stanley had a couple of not great reps, but this is, again, you're working with the offense. The pads aren't even on yet, so I'm not going to be too quick to judge the offensive line. Cole Jackson, who friend of the show here, he does great work. He's starting up a new project, so go check out what he's working on. He ended up saying, the offensive line looked slow. Salah's hands were slow as well. So Salah's stock seemed to be down here. Other people saying Jalen Armour-Davis, his stock was down. People did not like what James Prochet had to show today. People saying James Prochet's stock was mega down today. And again, I don't see him on the 53-man roster. There were a few plays where he was targeted and he wasn't able to haul in a pass, but people saying James Prochet stock was down. Everybody's wishing for a Tristan Colon Castillo back is what the whole thing is going on here. But also Kyle Hamilton's stock was up, according to some people today, which was really good. So I think, it's not necessarily something where I'm going to overreact to a stadium practice. And we're so early in the offseason where this is essentially the 4th training camp practice. Once the pads come on, that gives you a much better idea. Like you can only do so much of certain positions with the pads off. You're obviously not trying to injure your own teammates, and nobody's trying to injure anybody in the first place. Well, hopefully not. I'm hopefully not. But, you're not trying to be super physical to the point where an injury happens, because those are your teammates. Those are the guys you want out there. So if you want to make a play, you're going to do it with, kind of leaving some physicality out of it is what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say anybody's injuring anybody on purpose. But at the end of the day, this is a practice that I thought it was balanced overall. And coming back in the final part of the show, we'll look a little bit more into what happened at the stadium practice. We'll look at the latest Ravens news and notes, get to the rest of the comments we have here. You can keep commenting down below. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to talk about here on this live Saturday edition of Locked On Ravens. We're back here rounding out our final segment of Locked On Ravens Saturday edition. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. And thank you for tuning in. Obviously, you can subscribe on YouTube in audio form as well. Same show with audio and video, and it is free. There's no money involved here on Locked On Ravens. So 5 days a week Ravens content. We have it for you Monday through Friday. I appreciate all the support, whether you're an everydayer on this show or if this is your first time, welcome in to the channel, welcome into the show. And if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you for your support too. We're coming up on my 4 years of being the host of this show, which is incredible, dating back to 2019, which is when I started Lamar's MVP season, Marquise Brown's rookie year. We're not going to talk about how that year ended. We're not going to do that, but let's get into let's actually look at comments first here. Mike White saying, I think we see more red zone touchdowns from Andrews. And I agree, because look, when you got down into the red zone last year, if you were an opposing defense, you're saying, well, who are we going to put the most attention on? it was Mark Andrews and Mark Andrews only, right? Because of the injuries the Ravens went through at wide receiver. They didn't really have a lot of big time threats. Now it's not only Mark Andrews, it's Odell, it's Rashad Bateman, it's Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely with a jump, maybe Devin Duvernay, maybe Nelson Aguilar, some of these other guys in there, running backs, how are they going to factor in? So we'll see. But I'm excited to see how those guys end up playing this year. Robbie C saying, hate to see Gordon make the 53 and lose Mitchell. I wouldn't say that it's a total lock. I wouldn't say it's a total lock that Melvin Gordon makes the roster. Let me pull up the contract specs real quick, because I don't know if I've retweeted. I don't think I did. Let me look them up. Brian McFarland does great work for Ravens salary cap. We've had him on the show a couple of times here, and he, up to date with everything salary cap Ravens related. He put out the specs of Melvin Gordon's deal. It's a 1-year deal that includes no bonus, but has a fully guaranteed base salary of $1.165 million out of that 3.1. And his cap hit is also that number. So his cap hit's $1.165 million. Then the balance of $3.1 million is $1.935 in incentives that don't count against the cap. And if earned, those will count as a debt on the 2024 or as a debit on the 2024 cap. So the number for Gordon this year is 1.165, and then any other incentives he earns up to that 3.1 million is going to be counted on the 2024 cap. So not this year. So Gordon, those are the incentives. Whenever you see an incentive laden deal, you're more inclined, I would say, to say, yeah, that guy's going to make the roster, but it's not totally a given. I would still, if the Ravens keep 4 running backs, I would love to see Keaton Mitchell. I don't think, Mitchell didn't necessarily stand out in the practice today, but he's made a couple of really nice plays over the course of the entirety of the 4 days of training camp. So that's somebody who could be an option for them. And I've been on the Keaton Mitchell train since the moment the Ravens signed him as an undrafted free agent. Even before I was talking about him, look, if the Ravens want to draft one of those late round running backs, there were a couple. Dwayne McBride was one of those guys. Keaton Mitchell was another one. He's fast. So I'm excited. Nick D coming back saying, with JK missing in action, will it be fair to put him back in the number 1 spot if he returns relatively soon, or is he sabotaging himself? The whole situation with JK is so unclear, and there's so much that we don't know that I'm not going to say that anybody's sabotaging anyone right now. Like, I don't know how much of it really is injury and how much of it really is contract. Maybe that information will come out. But at this point, we're probably going to see, because if JK comes back and it's like 2 weeks before the regular season, I'm sure that they'll want to ramp him up. So it will probably be more of a split between Edwards and Dobbins. And if you've been listening to me here, if you're an everydayer, you know that I've been saying that I feel like this is going to be more of JK's backfield this year. But obviously, if he's not back or if he's kind of ramping up, we're going to see more Edwards. And that's not me saying Edwards doesn't deserve carries. It's still going to be a split. I just think it's going to be more of a 1A, 1B, with Dobbins being the 1A and Edwards being the 1B, as opposed to maybe a pretty even split. It's been a very even split for them over the course of when they've been on the field together. And then we have a couple other comments here. Sarah Diane Smith saying, with Bowser out, could Trenton Simpson get some plays at Sam? I think that's a pretty solid option for him. I think using him as a backup Sam could be good. Now, if they sign a Kyle Van Noy, if they sign, who else would fit this? Maybe a Jadeveon Clowney could play some, maybe not though. Clowney's not really, he doesn't really drop back into covers the way Bowser does. But in terms of a Sam, Kyle Van Noy, I'm so high on what Kyle Van Noy brings because of the fact that he can play a couple of different roles. Now, if we're going back to DeJuan Smoot, and obviously that's in the past, right? He's a Ravens legend in my book because of how quickly that went. But if you're talking about DeJuan Smoot, he was inside-outside versatility. Like, he can play interior defensive line and outside linebacker. That's like what Jadeveon Clowney can do. Van Noy is outside linebacker, inside linebacker, and the coverage ability is there. So he could play drop. He can cover guys. And I would feel comfortable, like Trenton Simpson, fine. Like, he can cover, he can do that. Like, sure, if they don't sign a Kyle Van Noy and Trenton Simpson is their backup Sam, I'm fine with that. But I'm curious to see how they use him. We haven't really gotten a full glimpse into that too. And then Nana Rave 8 coming in saying Marlon got a 15-yard penalty because he couldn't stop Odell Beckham, another top grade receiver. Aguilar definitely isn't it. He needs to be off our team. I don't know. Did you see something with Aguilar? I didn't see something from Aguilar. Maybe I missed it, but Aguilar has actually been, according to accounts, one of the better receivers in training camp. And look, Aguilar is not going to be a guy who goes out, and he shouldn't be a guy who goes out there and leads the team in receptions and catches 10 touchdowns and 1,000 yards. But if he's your 5, I'm fine with him as the 5. And if everybody remembers when Aguilar got signed, and I was this way too, everyone was like, oh my, they cannot do this again. Aguilar cannot be the only guy they sign. And that's what I said. I said, Aguilar can be a signing. If he's your 4, if he's your 5, then fine. But if you sign him to be essentially like a 3 or a 2 in this offense, no dice. That can't be what happens. Then obviously we know the Ravens go out there, they get Odell, they draft Zay Flowers. So I don't know. I didn't see anything with Aguilar. Maybe you did and I didn't see it, but I think Aguilar has been, I honestly say, better than expected. I didn't really expect a lot from him, but I understand with the drops, people are they're a little bit concerned if, maybe in a big spot, Aguilar drops a pass. The drops have followed Aguilar throughout his entire career. So we will probably see a couple in Baltimore. I would not be shocked, but again, Aguilar is your 5. I feel so much better about that than Aguilar is the 3 or the 2. Other stuff that's happened, though, over the course of, what happened today, the Ravens, they released Trayvon Mullen yesterday with a failure to disclose physical condition designation, which I don't think I've ever seen that before. I'm sure it's happened, but I don't think I've ever seen that before. The Ravens are actually reportedly, Just Rebeck reporting, they're going to sign him back after, I guess they're going to come to terms on compensation or just how the situation went down. I'm very curious to know how it went down. Like, I guess he didn't tell them about an injury or an ailment or some condition or something, and then the Ravens released him, but they're working on bringing him back. Maybe more incentives in that deal, maybe a lesser salary, I don't know, but by all accounts, apparently he will be back with the team, which is a guy that I'm super high on, super excited about. Zay Flowers, we've kind of talked about the update there. Didn't practice on Friday or Saturday, but is expected to be back. Well, I wouldn't say expected. There is a chance he comes back on Monday. I don't want to say expected, then he doesn't come back. Pepe Williams, also, he's been the guy on the PUP list, or one of them at least. There is some optimism he could return soon, and John Harbaugh saying that he could probably be the first guy off of the PUP list. So good for the Ravens to kind of get those guys back, and I guess more so corner-wise they need it, because we're going to see who the cornerback 3 is going to be. I don't know who's going to be there. There's a lot of – I'm a little nervous about cornerback 3. I'm not going to lie, at least at the time of this recording, where – right now it's Marlon Humphrey, Rock Ya-Sin, and then a lot of young guys. I know they signed Arthur Millette. I'm not super excited about that signing right now, but hey, who knows? Maybe he goes and does really well for him. We also heard from Lamar Jackson, him saying that he actually likes it when the Ravens are underdogs. And, I think we knew, like, if you watch this team and if you've watched them for a while, I've watched them for a while, the Ravens liked kind of moving in silence, being the underdogs. Do you remember even like the Joe Flacco led teams where everyone said, oh, well, this team, Joe Flacco can never lead this team, this, that, and the other. And then, kind of the underdogs, beating top-seeded Denver, beating Tom Brady in Foxborough, going to the Super Bowl, winning that. The Ravens in those playoff runs always were the underdogs. And with Lamar is such a polarizing figure. We've talked about Odell and I guess the star power he has. That can put a target, especially the way that it was in 2018 was Lamar comes in, everybody's like, oh, okay, it's a rookie coming in. What's he going to do? Only loses one game out of what? He went 6-1 in those games as a starter. Now, obviously 2018, they lose in the playoffs, but then 2019 was all right. What's the next step for Lamar? That 2019 season put the target on their back. They were the best team in football that year, regular season wise, playoff wise. Again, we're not going to talk about that one, but I think that this year, the people just aren't talking about the Ravens I think we've been used to over the past 4 or 5 seasons, because all the attention's on Kansas City, it's on Buffalo, it's on Philly, it's on Cincinnati, it's all those teams, where I think Baltimore's, like I say, the big 4 in the AFC is Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Baltimore. No particular order there, but those are my top 4 teams. But Baltimore's not really being talked about it. So Lamar Jackson said, he kind of likes being the underdog, moving in silence a little bit and just playing football. Lamar also said that the Netflix series Quarterback, they reached out to him, but he's focused on football right now. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time right now with the Ravens, with the new look offense. Hopefully everybody getting back into the swing of things. Hopefully the offense can pick up things faster here. And again, you don't want to rush anything. The offense is going to have some bumps and bruises along the way, but that's okay. I don't want people to be super alarmed that the offensive line isn't performing at full strength right now, not in pads, or the offense is struggling here and there. So I'd say overall, stadium practice was a success. The offense struggled early, I think picked up late. Lamar connection with Odell, Lamar's connection with Mark Andrews. We saw a couple of the defensive line out. I'd say a pretty encouraging day for the Ravens. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. And I, too, last comment here coming in saying Lamar would never, ever do the quarterback series. I knew it. Yep, that's what it is. Lamar is focused on football right now. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you want to listen to the replay, they'll be available. It'll obviously be available in audio form. But if you'll excuse me, I have the reason I'm wearing the shirt, I promised it. The reason I'm wearing the palm tree shirt is I have a Barbie and Oppenheimer premiere to get to. So I'm going to be doing that. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in on this Saturday. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel as well. We'll be back here on Monday with more analysis from the stadium practice, more training camp analysis, stock reports, ups and downs, and so much more here coming up on Locked On Ravens. So thank you for tuning in. I'll see you right back here on Monday on Locked On Ravens, coming up on a very exciting week, I'd say, of content. So we'll do more analysis, more news, and we'll see you right back here on Locked On Ravens.